enough.
Yeah, this is sort of my curse for making fun of people who spend a lot of time with PowerPoint as I became that guy.
So did I. I'm working on my first Six Sigma executive PowerPoint, so looking forward to that.
All right, well, very good. Well, thank you again, everybody. I think we'll give it just one.
I got to say hi to John. Hi, John.
Hey. Which one? There are three of us.
Yeah, wait,
that one. That one.
That one. Oh, you're not saying hi to me? Oh, I feel bad.
Like somebody got a standing desk for Christmas or something, David? I don't remember.
No, I've actually had it for many years, and Sarah reminded me last week that I should use it more often.
I think he's sitting anyway.
All right. Well, in the interest of time and all of the above, thanks everybody for joining. I'm going to go ahead and I'll get this started. Dave Fine, if you would be, and Mr. Richards, by the way, thank you, alumnus. Chairman Emeritus is I think the phrase,
yes.
However that works.
Greetings.
But
for life. Good to see you too, David. It's been a while. There you go.
Let me, if I may, and then I think, Greg, if you would be so kind, if we're not recording, if you don't mind, and if we let everybody know, if you're okay with this, hopefully we're recording this for people who cannot join. So hopefully everyone's okay with that. Dave Fine, just really quickly, do you want to kick this off at all as our president of the local chapter?
Oh, thank you, John. And thank you for putting this together and organizing it all, because it is quite the big subject. So what we've been working on in the chapter is to increase our value to the membership. And one of the big things we've been talking about over the past several months is the explosion of certifications for project management. And one of those big things is we didn't really understand it very well. And we have a subject matter expert who's raised his hand, that'd be John. And he said, hey, I can sort this out for you. And here we are today. So the whole point is this is going to be extremely valuable, I know, for me, and then the rest of you, because it is for me. And from there, we'll be able to get you'll be able to get a better handle on what fits for what you're doing and what best to go after. Because it used to just be get your PMP, move on. But now with all the I don't want to call it fracturing, but John had a good word for it. What was it? Micro certification.
Yeah, micro credentials.
Micro credentials. Thank you.
Yeah, and that's a big move, not just with PMI, but more broadly. So with that, thank you, David. And so I'm going to just jump right in. And we really do want this to be collaborative. So although I will be threatening everybody with yet another PowerPoint in your life, like more cowbell, that said, this is really just a way to sort of guide the conversation. And please do jump in with your experiences, et cetera. This, by the way, I hate using stock photos now, so this is part of my hiking path over by Wingfield Springs up in the hills, and thought this was a good metaphor for, yeah, there you go, John and Fred, if you're out here, if you ever want to go for a hike, let me know, or go jeeping out in the Golden Eagle area. But that said, lots of options here, and I think they're all good. So we'll quickly just jump right in with that. So the goal on the agenda, this is also the path up to those hills from my backyard at sunrise. Nice place to be. So our goal is to understand the PMI's key certifications, both paid and free e-learning, to assess which may be the most useful and usable for our and your career journey. We're going to do a facilitated discussion. So thank you to everybody for joining. For PMI board members and former board members, our President Emeritus, David Richards, thank you for joining as well. Feel free to jump in. It's really about your personal experience and we'll knowledge sharing amongst others. The agenda, first, we're going to review and compare the most common paid PMI certifications. So we talked about the PMP, which for whatever reason makes me always think of the singing along with the AC/DC TNT song for whatever reason. That's sort of where my head goes with PMP. So yes, go ahead. That'll be stuck in your head all day. You're welcome.
Thank you.
But it's not just the PMP anymore. So let's talk about how the PMI is evolving with these paid certs. and the journey there. They're worth a lot, but they take a lot to get, and that's part of the conversation as well. And then discuss as we review and compare those key certs. Thank you, John. We are going to be BFFs by the end of this call, if not already. Discuss thoughts and observations related to the process, value, and challenges with getting certified. We get a lot of questions and feedback at the board level of where folks are having challenges, questions, et cetera, along the path to getting the PMP. And then the area that I will narrate a little bit more, but would like everyone to join as you have questions or experience. I did a bit of a deep dive about PMI's free micro credentials and certifications. And like any good sort of learning, that came from my own need. So it wasn't something I was necessarily trying to do for the chapter. I found one really good course and then went down the rabbit hole and found that they had a lot of stuff that's free just based on being a member. So you all are members. You've already paid your annual fee. You've paid your local chapter fee. You can get some cool stuff with that. So with that, we'll roundtable which courses have been taken or want to take. So if I'm the only one, I'll tell you which ones I've taken in my perspective. But if any of you have been through those micro credentials or are considering them, let's talk about them and then share those experience and observations. And then if there's any final Q&A. So it is, I almost said 3:07. My clocks are all set to the East Coast, even though I am in Sparkles, Nevada. So we've got about 43 minutes to go. Yes, that is what we call Sparks these days, David. We call it Sparkles because it does. You're welcome, Fred. So the first is, why do we even why do we care about PMI certifications? Here's some data that's available that will help reinforce if you already have a cert or if you're looking to get yours. Here's some of the data that PMI has provided that I think tells part of the story. PMP certified professionals earn 22% higher median salaries globally. And in the US, it's even more so with a delta of 40 grand in terms of a median, 93 for non-PMP versus 123 for PMPs. If for no other reason, the hard work that it takes to get a PMP or some of these other certifications pays for itself literally, financially, among other ways. The other ways include some data also provided by PMI about project success rates, and some of their data that they provided that I thought was helpful to reinforce why we do this. Organizations with more than 1/3 of project managers that have certifications by PMI, I don't know if that's just PMPs or more broadly, I believe that's based on PMPs, but report a 35% higher success rate for their projects. And then one of the credentials that some folks may be considering, some folks may have in terms of our chapter, I think we've got a number, I don't recall what that is offhand, but PMI ACP, the Agile Certified Practitioner certification, are in high demand these days as a large number of organizations, in this case 71%, as the PMI's measurement report using Agile approaches for their projects. So these are some just really solid quantitative reasons why we would like to do this. And then the last question, and this is always a little bit interesting for me. So I work for an organization that has other Agile certifications and provides certifications like Certified Scrum Master, Scrum Professional, Value Management, et cetera. I don't think they're mutually exclusive. It's sort of like, what's the right tool for the job? What cert gets you where you want to be? That said, the PMI has over 1 million PMP certification holders worldwide. I think it is the de facto standard that most folks look for beyond like a CSP or some of those types of certifications. I will also say, as somebody who has done a lot of hiring, as a former hiring manager and who had a number of hiring managers who reported to me, when I saw that somebody had a PMP, even if it wasn't Agile based, it told me a lot, about the level of discipline, focus, and commitment to their craft that those individuals bring to the table. It's part of why I'm proud to be associated with the PMI and with our chapter. Not all credentials are created alike. Not all certification bodies are created alike. And PMI still is, from my perspective, in all of those capacities that I've had, is still the standard bearer. So I don't know if on this, is there anyone else have any other data that you would like to add into this? Again, I'd like to make this as much of a dialogue as possible. Any other thoughts or questions or any metrics that you have to share? David, please.
I got two. So one is, I can absolutely tell you that the salary advantage is true. From the day before certification in 2014 to the day after, I got a 30K bump. So yeah, absolutely. And I know one PMI ACP guy, and he's on this call.
Awesome. Well, I welcome
Mr. Richard, yes.
Mr. Richard, and anybody else who may have the ACP. John, go ahead, please.
Yeah, one thing I wanted to suggest, since I recently last year passed my CAPM, which went into extensive work on Agile. You needed to know everything there was about Agile, as well as they now are testing you as you need to know how to be a business analyst, as it is connected to project management. So it's quite extensive at what I had to learn to pass the exam. When I got into the PMP, it was the same, even though I did not pass that back in June. It went into an extensive work on Agile, but it was more or less not so much on memorizing charts and graphs and more technical stuff, but it was how you fix a project that goes sideways. So 90% of the questions I kept facing, it was everything, but it's like you couldn't get caught up in the weeds to say, oh, I'm in a predictive. No, I'm in an agile. No, I'm in a hybrid. Your choice has to be, what's the best fix no matter where you're at. So I've been focusing on that. Exactly.
That's great. And yeah, thank you for sharing that, John. And I think that actually is a really good context, because again, the reality, I think from my observation, and all of you certainly join in as well, in the real world, you may likely, and especially if you're doing consulting or contracting, you're going to get whatever kind of project you get in whatever kind of org you are joining. And a lot of mid to large size organizations will actually, the ones that I tend to work with and have for the last at least decade, have a hybrid. They're not 100% agile. They're not 100% traditional waterfall. And so to be able to understand how to be an effective project leader, irrespective of a particular framework, is incredibly valuable. So it's good to know that they're really focusing on how you address these issues, you address risk mitigation, et cetera, irrespective of a particular framework. Thank you for adding that. Any other thoughts on this slide before we jump right into the next? All right. So we talked about that a little bit, but what I'd say, let's do a little bit more group discussion if there's any other thoughts here. For those of you who have had a PMP for some time, are there any changes that you think would be worth sharing? Fred, go ahead. And Jason.
Well, I got my PMP in 2006. I am under 500,000, my PMP number, compared to the million that are now in place. So there's been a lot of changes, and I taught some PMP review classes for a while, between maybe 10 and 7 years ago, and saw that there was a lot of change and a lot of bringing agile and those bringing us closer to all being in the same boat, rather than just agile's way over there and waterfall's way over here. That, to me, that's helped a lot. And I'm kind of looking forward to the rest of this discussion to see what changes have been happening. I spent the last 5 years in an organization that really didn't value project management very much, and just sort of had to survive through it. But my PMPs definitely got me where I am today, and I'm really happy to have it.
Awesome. Thank you, Fred. Jason, please.
Yeah, thank you guys. And this is a great discussion. This is great to learn about. It's interesting because I'm somewhat similar to Fred, where I'm about well, I'm 9 years in now to my PMP certification. Of course, I took it on the old 6th edition, which was still very much, the PIM book was a huge book. It was still very much waterfall based, lots of questions about earned value. And in that time, of course, I also became certified on Scrum and started to see the inroads that iterative processes have made. In an interesting twist, I've been doing some hiring lately, and I'm starting to find that there's a lot of folks who do not have a PMP who are looking for jobs. So people who are experienced Scrum or iterative practitioners, and it's more difficult for those folks to land something. Meaning that you really, I guess what it speaks to is that you really need grounding in both sides of the discipline. So most of us are coming at it from the PMP side and learning iterative, but I think about the folks that are coming from a purely iterative background, maybe working at startups or software development, and they haven't had a chance really to get some sort of either structural waterfall or hybrid type experiences. And I don't know, I kind of wanted to put that out to the group. That's my own little, I guess my ulterior motive is to find out about what it looks like in the people you're encountering, and talking about folks that are coming to a PMI certification from the other side, as opposed to coming from PMI as the center of their learning and going outward, or rather folks coming the other way.
Yeah, I certainly have thoughts. Although those of you who've been in these meetings with me before, I will always have thoughts, whether they're well informed or not.
Thoughts.
Exactly. But for others who have approached it from sort of from that point, others' perspectives coming to the PMI after going through other approaches. No.
John's got his hand up.
Oh yeah, not.
Right.
Oh, sorry, John. Yeah, go ahead, please.
Not specific to that, but I got my PMP relatively recently, I guess within the last 2 years. So I am in the millions, and I realized that it's much less about the ITTOs and much more about how you react while driving a project and kind of the best behavior to go forward. And what I found is it really gave me a language and a vocabulary that I can speak to executives in to explain my hippy dippy nonsense around like self-organizing teams and complexity conscious organizations. It's been very useful for me.
That's great. Yeah, and absolutely. And congratulations, by the way. A couple of years, that's a huge effort. What I would say, let me see what my next bullet point is on here. I think I had one. Before we get into that, though, the question about coming from a different angle, what I will say, and this sort of, John, I think maybe alludes to what you were saying a bit, and I think if it was Jason as well, what as a hiring manager, what I see, and part of the reason that I became a member and ultimately a board member of the local chapter is, as I sort of mentioned at the onset, as a hiring manager, the amount of time and effort that it takes to get one of these credentials says a lot about the commitment to the craft that, candidly, and as somebody who has I have a CSP, I have a CSM, I have a CSPO, I've got a bunch of other, I've got a bunch of the little 3-letter acronyms following my title. And those are valuable, but certainly the PMP and some of these other certifications that take quite some time and effort and a lot of money, it says a lot about the commitment to the craft that you all do that other certs don't have. So with that, the next question that I had on this, and then we'll do a quick comparison of some of the common paid ones. For those of you who are preceding getting one of these primary paid certs, the PMP, the ACP, some of the other ones that we'll review, is anyone going through that process right now? Go ahead, John, please.
Yes, I'm currently working on my PMP.
Great. And so what's your motivation, if you don't mind? I mean, I know what your motivation is because we've talked about it, and I created this bullet point just for you, but not just for you. So okay. What's your motivation?
My primary motivation is I started my quest on this, getting my job currently with IDT as a Six Sigma analyst, but I am also a project manager. So my project's all grounded in Six Sigma, Lean Six Sigma. And even in that discipline, they do talk about project management, but they don't quite go into how do you run a Six Sigma project? And is it predictive? Is it hybrid? Is it agile? And I've, through my own testing, and I'm hoping through my PMP, it's helping me basically develop a hybrid approach, which I've used in my first project, has been quite successful. But I want to know more. I want to become more comfortable about handling difficult situations, which is what the PMP is teaching me, is like, when your project goes sideways, how do you fix it? But
Right.
it's definitely giving me the skills to know how to deal with when you have unexpected disruptions um, that could be quite costly to the company if a project they put me on is not successful.
Yeah, well, that's great. And thank you, John. Thanks for sharing along the journey and the motivations. I think that's really incredibly helpful. And those of you who aren't familiar with Lean Six Sigma, by the way, after this call, I'm gonna chat with John and see if we can make something happen. Because if you're not familiar with Lean Six Sigma, that is something that I think would be beneficial for anybody in our space. Greg, please. You're on mute, or at least I can't hear you. I'm hearing static. Still can't hear you.
There it is.
There we go.
Hey, okay. Nice pasta.
There we go.
Yeah, so I'm going to actually speak for Stephen, or he can speak for himself too. Yeah, we work at a small business where we do design and development, and we had projects we were running without any knowledge of how to run anything, and especially when things are going wrong. So I found in my MBA course information about project management and started feeding in, and maybe did things backwards by getting on a board for something I'm not certified in. But was eager to learn. So it was a lot of just trying to make our business work better by making sure our new projects, our new designs run smoother. So our main motivation. But yeah, and really just learning how to, and then especially really curious on how to work more in agile processes within a more waterfall-based focused design thing is something keen to better strongly implement.
Awesome. Yeah, no, thank you. And we'll talk a little bit about some of the free certifications that they have. The micro credentials are kind of cool, and there's one out there that might be interesting to you singular and you plural. But thank you for the experience there and perspective. If any other thoughts on this before I move on, let me see if I can actually click on the actual PowerPoint and not the screen with all of you, which I figure I'd be better at by this point in time, and I'm not. So, I guess one last question. Why? And I talked about this, at least from my perspective as a hiring manager before, but any last thoughts about why PMI over other certifications? Why did you choose any of you who have the PMP or any PMI certs? Why did you choose that one?
I'll jump in quick,
Please.
and then we'll flip over to Mr. Richards too, because
Yes,
I know he'll have a comment. But I did one through SAFE about, I guess it's 4 years now,
right?
For CSPO, and the difference between that and PMI is huge. It just feels like PMI has more experience in the area. When you're doing a certification, you know exactly what's in it. I just felt the depth was more, there was more value there, even though the company paid for me to do it, but still I think of it as my own money. Or the CSPO is just easier. I don't know which.
Well, maybe both. Yeah, the CSPO is objectively speaking easier, but yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense, and I think resonates. John, go ahead, please.
Yeah, one thing I wanted to kind of suggest, I don't know if people have ever run to this, because I passed my CAPM, and the reason I took it was I didn't think I qualified for the PMP. And it was after I passed it, I started to think, looking at the qualifications, it's basically 3 years out of an 8-year span. So when I finally just sat down and mapped it out on a piece of paper, and I was like, dang it, I have my 3 years. But I don't regret taking the CAPM. It was a great primer. It really grounded me in everything I need to know for the PMP. So I would say if there's people out there thinking of the PMP and they don't think they have the experience, simple as get a piece of paper, draw out your timeline with your jobs and job titles, and see if you don't have too many overlaps, and see if you do have the 3 years.
Yeah, that's a great call. That makes a lot of sense. Yeah, good call. David, did you have anything? I know that Dave put you on the spot. I don't know if you have anything you would like to add, Mr. Richards.
Well, one thing I would add, and this is really about the PMI ACP. You may have a lot of experience with Agile, and this is particularly true 10 years ago, but it wasn't called that.
Right.
And it's important to realize that you can map the kinds of things that you did and the way you did them into the terminology that PMI recognizes. And that's exactly what I did when I qualified for the ACP. Was just describe the projects, how we had approached them, how we were doing iterative development, that kind of thing. So awesome. just keep in mind that you can
use that experience. Yeah, and I think so for those of you who are on that part of the journey, or maybe on that part of the journey, what both David and John said, you may well have the experience that you need, or a lot of that experience, without necessarily knowing, without necessarily a direct mapping. I think what Dave Fine had said as well. So, and if anyone has questions on that, I'll at least volunteer myself as being a conduit and can reach out to other board members to connect. So if anyone is going through that journey, again, part of what we want to do as a chapter here is to help all of you on your journey, especially the board members. So if anyone is struggling with that and you want to have some asynchronous, offline conversation, please feel free to reach out to me. I won't volunteer by other board members directly, but I'll reach out to them if need be. And I got a pink glowing heart from Dave Hines, so I think that means he's okay with it. So with I'm assuming that's what that means.
That's what that means today.
All right. So anyway, you've got resources here if there's anybody who you would like some help with from the board, who has gone through that journey to some degree with you. So we've already talked about some of these. I won't spend a ton of time because I think the micro credentials might be new to a lot of you. But in terms of the most popular certifications, we actually talked about all of these in the conversation so far. I'll provide this PDF, by the way, or a PDF of this for everyone who has joined if you'd like it, because I've got some links in the appendix of this presentation. But these are the primary ones. The pros and cons have already really been, I think, talked to some degree. The PMP, I think, is really the gold standard. Lots of experience, lots of education. I don't have the cost here, but it's not inexpensive to accomplish. But again, there's a lot of work that it takes to get that PMP. But when somebody sees that on your resume, that says a lot about who you are as a project or program or portfolio management professional. CAPM, we've talked about that. That can be a really good start for a lot of folks. And it still sends a really strong message about your commitment to your craft. But I think as John maybe had alluded to, that might be a good place for some folks to start. Go ahead, please.
Yeah, one thing I could say you about the CAPM, that I still put in about 3 months of hardcore studying, a ton of practice exams, and that's what got me through it. And I'm doing the same thing for the PMP. So it's a lot of practice tests. And the one thing with the PMP, and they say, you're supposed to look at the PMBOK guide. It's like the PMP is so beyond the PMBOK guide. I'm looking at all sorts of articles that are put out by PMI that talk about aspects about management. So I would say don't limit yourself to just a PMBOK guide. And I would say one last tip is look at the PMP guide in the sections you're going to be tested on and make sure your testing is mapping to that, because that will bite you quickly.
Yeah. No, it is an incredibly difficult test, as I understand and recall. So.
Yeah, yes, it is.
All right, very good, thank you. And Dave Richards had talked about the ACP. So that I will say, since I spend most of my time in the Agile space, that still tells me a lot when I see that on a resume. How broadly it's accepted. Beyond that, I don't have any way to really compare. I actually tried to do a little bit of research and was not successful in getting hard metrics that I was comfortable with. comparing that Agile certification versus others, I will say that it certainly still is a lot more significant from a indication of focus and emphasis and expertise than, like a CSM or a CSPO. I have both of those, but those are 2-day courses and they're not that difficult to pass, the CSM and the CSPO. When I see the ACP, that tells me that is much more of a commitment than a CSM, CSPO, et cetera, some of the other Agile certifications. They're not mutually exclusive, but I think they can be very complementary. But the ACP certainly is more substantial in terms of the amount of effort, but also in the amount of value. So a couple of other ones, and unless anybody here has any of these are ones that I think are largely emergent, and these are not, this is not the entirety of the list that PMI has, but these were some of the other ones that I think may start to grow in terms of volume, just based on what the industry is doing, overall program management, so more broad than individual project management, portfolio management, business analysis, and then the risk management one I thought was kind of interesting as well. Does anyone have any of these, or is anyone contemplating any of these?
Yeah, I'm actually contemplating the PFMP in my job as a PMO director. I also am the portfolio manager, at least for the time being. So that was requested of me. I'm still pretty much, I'm basically halfway through the experience train. So I'm about a little over 2 years in. So I'm going to need another couple of years before I can apply. But I'm basically going through the certification process, similar, doing all the pre-work now, getting all the study guides, and just trying to gird myself, because I know it's a rigorous test.
Yeah, and if at any point, if you get further along with that, or when you get further along, if you'd like to share your observations with the chapter, 6 months, whatever, that would be wonderful. I would say
you bet.
As also somebody who's been a both traditional and Agile portfolio manager and leader and built PMOs, that one was really interesting to me. I've not taken it. I'm not really familiar with it with a whole lot of detail beyond what the PMI has provided, but that is certainly an area where I think those of us who are on that journey, and it sounds like you're quite well along leading a PMO, but that is really going to be, especially as the industry moves towards more of a product-based ongoing focus, the portfolio level is going to be huge. So yeah, would love to hear your perspective, but glad to know that you're going through that. And it looks, at least from what I've seen, it looks like it is an incredibly valuable and I don't know that there's a whole lot that's competitive out there in terms of at least something that is that substantive in terms of breadth and depth. So
thank you, John. And I did want to ask the group too, because myself and one of my PMs will be attending the PMI conference next month. Cool. And awesome. Actually, I'll be really looking at PMO and portfolio management pieces. So that's my discovery mission for this year's trip. So I'm sure I'll be running into some of you there.
I know that we got a couple board members out there. Anyone else who's joining, Dave Fine will buy you a beer. And I'll drink it. Actually, there we go. But there you go. Joking aside, would love to connect with anybody. If you're going to be out there, would love to connect. Yeah, Linda's going to be there. It's going to be awesome. I'm giving a talk, but other than that, I think that the agenda is good. So just exclude that one Halberstadt guy, and we should be fine.
We'll be fine.
Very good. All right. Well, thank you. So the next one we've talked about.
John, can you pop back 1 second? The PMI PBA and the RMP. So I don't think I know anybody that has a PBA.
No.
And then I know one person that has the RMP. So
yeah.
Just very poll. Yeah, anybody else know anybody that has either of those two?
Or any that aren't on this list? Yeah. Anyone familiar with anybody who is working on considering or has acquired any of these certs or any other certs that we haven't talked about of the primary paid ones?
Yeah, let's throw it in the chat. Okay, that's what I thought. So moving ahead, John, thanks.
Thank you. That's okay.
I got one eye on the clock. So.
Yeah, no, I did as well. So I think we've talked about what certifications people have and what they're considering and why. So unless there's any thoughts, I just spend a little bit more time on the next section, if that makes sense, and we'll have some more time for Q&A. You good to proceed? All right. So this is an area. Well, hey, Kathy. So this is the next area was one that really was the origin story for why I wanted us to have this dialogue as a chapter for our Lunch and Learn was I stumbled upon a micro credential or micro certification that was free. And I normally say there's nothing more expensive than free. But in this case, Jason knows what I'm saying. But in this particular instance, the quality of what the PMI provides to members for free really was impressive to me. As somebody who does coaching and training and consulting as a career, the fact that we have this as a resource that we've already paid for as part of our membership, that was really like, this is a really good opportunity for learning. So again, I will share all of these links with everybody, but in terms of some of the ones that I thought could be most valuable, and again, there's no barrier to entry. If you have a PMI membership, doesn't matter what certs you have, if any, all of these are available to you through your account. You just need to log in. I'll give you the links. You sign up for them. You take them at your leisure. Even if these aren't things that you need to know, if you're looking for PDUs, sometimes I have people reach out and they don't beat around the bush. How do I get PDUs? I'll show up to your Lunch and Learn against my will because I need a PDU. You can get a PDU. I'll be like Oprah. All of you can have a PDU. But this will get you even more PDUs. You get a PDU and you can get a bunch of PDUs. And this is where I started, which was the generative AI overview for project managers. This was my first free certification. Lots of PDUs for volunteering. Like I said, Fred, there's nothing more expensive than free, and that goes for us volunteers as well. But so we've got a lot of different options, and this is a curated list of the ones that I found to be really useful and usable and of very high quality. So for somebody who maybe is just getting started with project management, if you've got somebody who's joining your org, Jason, I hope I'm not picking on you. I don't know anything about your PMO, but like when I've built PMOs in organizations that didn't have them before, or I had people who were called project managers, didn't have that background. They were sort of self-taught. If we want to get everyone with a shared vocabulary, if we want to get everyone understanding sort of the basics about what project management is in a very simple, no barrier to entry way, there's the kickoff. And it's really just sort of holds you by the hand and walks you through the basics in less than an hour about project management. So that's one. Again, none of you are going to need that, but you may have somebody who joins your org that you want to have as like required reading. If you're an associate project manager, an intern, whatever that might be, that's a great option. And so that's one worth checking out and having in your toolbox in terms of things, again, that you can provide generally to others. The next one, the basics of Scrum. So you can pay to get Scrum training. You can go on YouTube and regret it immediately if you look for videos about it's awful.
We should.
There's something going on with YouTube, by the way, that I've not mastered. You have to have really like very uncomfortable looks on your profile picture on your YouTube video to get attention. Like, I don't know what's driving that, but if anyone goes on YouTube and you look for a how-to video, somebody is looking like they're in pain or very confused or incredibly excited. It's very, very strange emotional manipulation. But you can avoid all of that and just go straight to this and the basics of Scrum. So Scrum is something that I provide training and coaching and consulting on. It is an often abused framework for generally software development, but it can be used for any sort of project management or product sort of structure for managing the delivery of solutions, whether software or other. but it'll give you a really good, easy way. If you're going into an org and you don't have that agile experience, this is a way to get up to speed in, an hour or so about the basics of Scrum. Scrum has its own set of rules. They're successful when they're applied well, but they are very prescriptive. That's part of why it works, is it has a very concrete list of rules. And if you're not familiar with those, this is a really good way to get started, again, for free and in about an hour. So I don't know if anyone has been through any of these courses so far, Kickoff or Basics of Scrum. If you have, please feel free to. John Thompson, please.
Yeah, the certifications I've done on the free part recently, I've completed about 4 of them. I did the Basics of Scrum, and they have one on Discipline Agile, did AI overview for project managers, and the most recent one they just came out with was Business Continuity, which covers the gambit. Not just predictive, not just agile, just about everything. It's like threw in the kitchen sink for that one, but they're all free.
Yeah, that's great. And I actually, those other 2 that you mentioned, I'm glad that you did. I actually have them on the next slide. Could I put you on the spot? What did you think of the Basics of Scrum? How was that? I mean, 1 PDU, so it's about an hour. What was your take on that?
It was a good refresher from what I learned in my CAPM, because you really need to know Agile virtually inside and out to pass that test. And it's not just Scrum. You needed to know Scrum, Crystal, Extreme, Disciplined, and everything in between. So this was a good refresher to go over that, to capture the topics at a more higher level. But it's a great introduction. But if you want to pass a test, you're going to have to find courses like I found with course through Udemy that went over my CAPM training. But I've taken a lot of courses on LinkedIn Learning for Scrum and Agile. So the other thing I wanted to pitch, if anybody's working under PMP, there is a program called PMI Study Hall. And I can tell you that their practice exams are almost spot on compared to what the current test I just took June of this year. So it's extremely close to what you're going to experience in real life. And they give you full 4 exams, I think about several mini tests and a ton of other exams, but they're all worded and phrased in exactly what you're going to see on the PMP.
Oh, that's awesome.
I think it's like maybe $75 for 3 months. So that's my pitch for PMI on that one.
That's awesome. Yeah, thank you. No, that's great to know. And thanks again for sharing all of your learnings along the way on that journey. Those are great resources. The next 2, and it sounds like John has gone through this, as have I. Again, the generative AI overview for PMs. I will be honest, even as a PMI board member, I was skeptical about what I was going to see coming out of the PMI related to Gen AI when that course came out. And I thought that was at least 6 months ago. I don't honestly recall. I was really, really impressed, again, as somebody who creates this sort of content for a living, how well they did that work. I thought that was exceptional. But in the interim, and John, it sounds like you've taken some of these as well. They now have 3 different generative AI courses, all of them complementary to one another. So talking to AI, prompt engineering for PMs specifically. So I'm definitely an advocate of understanding prompt engineering based on role. I'm doing a talk actually next week on that as a live stream, but I will definitely, I will recommend complementary, not in conflict or competitive to what I'm doing and what others are doing. That's a really good 3-hour or so course specifically about how to craft good prompts for generative AI. If you're not working with Gen AI in your role as a PM, that's something I would highly encourage everyone to just use that as part of your, consider yourself a cyborg, but it's a great set of tools to have in your toolkit to help you do the work that you do. But this is focused for project managers and program managers. So it's really tailored towards prompts that you can use to accomplish what we do as PMs. And then the last one, and John, I don't know if you went through this one as well. Did you go through all 3 of the Gen AI? You are fully functional, Fred. One of your charming qualities. Um,
No, I would say I've only done the AI overview for project managers. I didn't know about these others. So,
yeah. So
but
yeah, they're all complementary. So for anyone who hasn't done these, do the Gen AI overview first. And then I would suggest talking to AI prompt engineering. That's one that you'll be able to immediately use the content from. Prompt engineering is going to be really the nuts and bolts of how you interact with any generative AI tool. And it's really good, practical, immediately usable guidance. And then the last one, and it's 5 PDUs. It's a bit of a commitment. That one I think I did across like 3 days after work. But the data landscape of Gen AI for project managers is really a deep dive about using generative AI, but a lot about the data that's needed, especially. Go ahead, Linda, please. You're on mute.
Oh, hey, I didn't want to interrupt. I just wanted to add that I've taken all 3 of these. My favorite by far is talking to AI. So they actually create prompts for you guys that you can download and save, that you can edit to use during any type of circumstance that you approach as a project manager. So that resource alone is worth it, not to mention the PDUs you get from taking this course. So if you haven't already, I would suggest this is the first thing you should go and look for, and take advantage of from PMI. They are amazing quality courses.
Thank you. Yeah, I could not agree more. And the prompt engineering, that's what's really going to, beyond the theory, that's what you're going to be able to actually immediately start using to help your day-to-day. And then the data landscape, I don't know if anyone else has gone through that one. Again, another one, I was just really impressed with the quality, the breadth, and the depth of what the offering was, including they have a link to, if any of you use Miro, the virtual whiteboarding tool, the PMI has added a template that is now available on Miro specifically to help you walk through setting up in a collaborative a collaborative whiteboard, online whiteboard, how to set up your project, including the data elements of that generative AI project. So check that out if you use Miro as a tool. But I would highly recommend at least taking a look at all these. Again, we'll share the links, or you can find them on PMI's site as well under the e-learning options. So if there's no other thoughts or questions on this one, we're getting close to the end of our time together. But John, and I may ask you if you're comfortable, come back on camera or off mute, because you had mentioned the basics of disciplined agile, which is a PMI acquired disciplined agile from Scott Ambler 5 years or so ago, something like that. And it is a very well-defined approach to agile ways of working that is now part of the PMI. John, if you're still there, John Thompson, if you're comfortable, do you want to say anything about that one?
I don't think I've actually gone through that one yet. So.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you had said disciplined agile. If not,
I did the free course on the disciplined agile, and again, it kind of talked more about Scrum and the basic agile processes, from what I remember of it. But it was just going through the whole process of running an agile project. From backlog planning and all that kind of stuff. So.
Okay, so this one sounds like it may be complementary, but for anyone who's interested in a different sort of lens on agile ways of working, disciplined agile lives up to its name. I mean, if anyone's familiar with Scott Ambler's work, he is quite detailed in terms of his approach. He's done a lot of work on software modeling, and those are a lot of the books where I got to know him by name. So that might be another one to check out and just see what you think. But John, I think you had alluded to the business continuity one.
Yes, that one, like I said, it's everything in the kitchen sink. But it throws a little agile, a little predictive, a little hybriding.
Good, yeah.
I'm curious if PMI ever comes up with a certification for a hybrid.
Yeah, that'll be interesting, because
if they ever come up with
hybrid, the problem with hybrid is you're just sort of taking pieces from different ones that sort of make sense based on your context if you're doing it well. And so
Right.
But yeah, hybrid is its own sort of beast because it is, by definition, it's kind of it's not a well-defined hybrid. It's sort of, I'm going to pick the pieces that make the most sense based on where I am, but they're not always the same pieces from group to group.
Yeah, and I can tell you that the PMP tests extensively on hybrid when you read their questions. You be prepared for that.
That's great. That's a great call out because that is the modern world as well. I think most folks are saying most agile doesn't work in most real organizations exclusively agile, and there's always a place for both. So how do you blend those in a way that makes the most sense?
Yeah, waiting for that certification.
There you go. Well, they will have to nudge them on that a little bit.
Yeah.
And then the last two of the free courses that I've not taken yet, but I plan to, that you might be interested in, they just sounded interesting to me. So PMI has this concept of citizen developer business architect. And so I'm going to take a look at that one, but that sounded compelling. If anyone has gone through that, would love to hear your thoughts.
I would tell you I have tried that,
and
it wasn't for me. It seemed like it was hardcore programming for some.
Yeah, and that's why I want to check it out, is to see if it has a place in my toolbox.
Yeah,
and
I
then,
was there.
Yeah. And then the last one is wicked problem solving, which I believe came also from disciplined agile as an approach. But the idea of taming bias bias is just an issue out there everywhere. In some cases made more pronounced through like generative AI. That's one of its downsides, is that it amplifies a lot of bias that already exists based on how its data came to be part of the model. So I'm always curious about things on the periphery that help us be better PMs. And in terms of understanding about how to deal with bias, how to make better decisions, objective decisions, et cetera. So those last two I'm going to be going through, and I can report back later. And if anyone else has experience on those or any other of the courses, would certainly welcome any last sort of thoughts on those, or any of the other free micro credentials or certifications. Okay. Well, we're getting close to the end of our time together.
Just one quick question is, it says micro credentials and certifications. Does it come with letters or not?
That's a really good question. So I don't know if you get any cool TLAs or 3-letter acronyms. I rolled my eyes even as a 20-something the first time I heard somebody say a TLA, and I'm like, what's that? A 3-letter acronym. I'm like, oh, that's funny. That said, you will get a Credly, I think, is the vendor, so you can share it on LinkedIn. So you get a digital certification for it. I don't know if you get a whole bunch of cool letters, TLAs. Yeah, there you go, Jake. So I don't know, Jake, what else you got out of today, but if nothing else, use TLA to talk about TLAs, and other people will roll their eyes at you. But yeah, Fred, to your question, you will get a certification for that. You will get the PDUs. And I don't know if you get an acronym as part of it. We've got a lot of alphabets going on at this point with the number of certifications they offer. But all of these do offer PDUs. All of these do offer a certification that shows you have completed it. And I think that was it. So we only have a couple of minutes left. Oh, okay.
Just real quick before you get started, everyone, the claim code for the claiming your PDUs for this session is up on the chat. If you have any trouble using it, find me on LinkedIn and we'll get it sorted.
Perfect. Thank you. So we're just about at time. Are there any last questions that we might be able to answer in a couple of minutes or less?
John, I want to thank you.
Oh, seriously. My pleasure.
Well done.
Thank you. Thanks, all of you. Thanks, Dave. Thanks to the board for showing up. I really, really appreciate it. Thanks to all of you for showing up, for joining in ways large and small. As Dave said, we want these meetings to be useful to you. So that'll be my last ask of all of you on behalf of the board members here. Are there other things that you would like us to consider to have speakers for, or to have dialogue on? Feel free to send those to us on LinkedIn. through email, carrier pigeon, message in a bottle, stone tablets, whatever you prefer. Fred, you have last call.
I just had one thing to say. The decision came a long time ago. The president of my company came and said, "Hey, I'd like you to go get your PE." And I said, "Well, I'm really much more of a project manager than I am an engineer." And I decided to go get my PMP certification first. I did get my PE eventually, but that completely changed the direction of my career and put me where I am today. Easily paid itself back tenfold or 50-fold over for the amount of time and money I spent on it. It was the best thing I've done in my career for certification.
Wonderful.
I could second that easily.
Wonderful.
And,
I can't
I'm
think
not
of
even allowed to do that.
Yeah, and it
wait.
it shows an awful lot about who you are as professionals. So I can't think of a better way to close today's session. Thank you all. Oh no, the gavel. And with that, we are adjourned. Thank you so much, everybody. It was great having this opportunity to
Good
speak
job,
about
John.
it.
Thanks all.
All right.
See you again.
Everybody.
Cheers.
Thanks, guys. Bye.
Yeah, thank you very much.